candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves. And by the way, I'm just going to try to go back and forth, giving each person a chance to go first. If I screw up, I'm so sorry. I'm trying to remember who goes first. So who would like to go first and just introduce yourself?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Vitar. I'm running for Common Council here in South Utica. First, I'd like to thank the South Utica Neighborhood Association for coordinating this event, the other side for hosting it. But most importantly, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight because, as far as I'm concerned, this is the core of South Utica right here. So, a little bit about myself. I grew up in Utica, East Utica. I played baseball on Carmelite's Little League. Used to ride my bike at Proctor Park. Remember eating at Rosario's and Parkway Pizza, and I have great memories of growing up in the area. Went to college in Vermont, went to Syracuse Law School after that. While I was in law school, I met my wife, Erica, labor and delivery nurse, and we have a 4-week-old little boy now. And about 5 years ago, we moved back to South Utica, and this is where we've been ever since. Now, I know folks came here to hear about the issues, Mike and I's position on certain things, but before we do that, I do just want to say, Republican, Democrat, Independent, we're all from South Utica, we're all the same community. I know we really want a lot of the same things. We want to push our community forward, we want safer streets, we want to handle the St. Elizabeth situation properly, which I know is going to come up tonight. But again, regardless, we're all one community, and if we look around the room, we see our neighbors, we see family members, we see the people we run into at the grocery store. So keeping that in mind, I do again want to thank everyone for coming out. I look forward to answering all your questions. Thank you.
I'll turn it on whenever you say.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Bergamo, and I'm also a resident of South Utica, of course, running for South Utica Common Council. I'd like to thank South Utica Neighborhood Association once again for hosting the event, the other side for allowing us to use the room. And so I'm a lifelong native of Utica, New York. I grew up on the east side, moved to the south side 40 years ago when my wife and I got married. I have 3 grown children. I worked in the Utica City School District for 40 years, believe it or not, and I just think Utica is a great place to raise a family, and I want to continue to kind of help the younger generation to ensure that what I experienced and my wife experienced as a young couple, that we continue to have those same type of lifestyle, safety, and so forth in South Utica. So there's a lot of issues, like Joe said. However, we are all one, like he said as well. No, very well said, Joe. But I also want to thank, I want to congratulate him and his wife on the birth of their youngest boy, Joe 4, right? And so anyways, I look forward to a good conversation.
Thank you. So, Mr. Bergano, I'm actually going to have you answer this first question first. And you'll have 2 minutes as a reminder. What is one thing you would change or do to improve residents' quality of life, and what can you do to make that a reality?
Okay, I got a big mouth, so can everybody hear me?
No, use the mic.
You're giving me a hard time.
You'll
Use
get
the
used
mic.
to it. I love it now.
It really does help.
So what would I do to improve the quality of life? I would continue to be in tune with the current neighborhoods and what their specific needs are in the neighborhoods. Specifically, South Utica is a big area of land, and there's a lot of different issues that go on in the different neighborhoods of South Utica. And what's typical with my specific neighborhood might not be very typical on the other side of Sunset Ave or so forth. So I just think what we need to do collectively is, I would promote to have like a bipartisan diversity group get together on every couple months or as a need basis to specifically look at the needs of this particular neighborhood and circle back to perhaps the police, the codes department, and nuisance and abatement and or violations that are somewhat a nuisance to the particular neighbors in the neighborhood. The other thing, safety, is speed, in my opinion, is a huge factor in South Utica. I mean, Genesee Street up here from Seward to Woodlawn Ave is a speed race. So I think there needs to be more presence with traffic control as well within the city. And lastly, which probably wouldn't cost the taxpayers anything, and I'm a firm believer in this, is bring back the neighborhood watch. If you see something, say something. And I personally experienced that and obtained a victory with it, which I'll probably get into later, what was going on in my particular neighborhood. So.
All right, thank you. Mr. Peter?
So, quality of life in South Utica, first I'd start by saying I think we're pretty lucky. First of all, we live in a great part of Utica where issues vary depending on neighborhoods. But the first thing that comes to mind is infrastructure, streets and sidewalks. I think it's one of the most important things in our community to have safe streets, safe sidewalks. Give an example. Someone walking down the street, walking their dog down the street, wanting to make sure there's no potholes there. Whether you're driving to and from work so you don't feel like you're ping-ponging back and forth to avoid the potholes in the streets. I don't know about everyone here, but the street that I live on, potholes riddle it back and forth. It's a tough time even to wheel a stroller down the street with our child. As I knock door to door, infrastructure is something that comes up. The streets are what comes up. The sidewalk safety is what comes up most of the time. And in speaking with someone right off Westminster Avenue, she was going for a jog, twisted her ankle and broke her ankle. These are the kind of things I think we need to ensure doesn't happen in our neighborhoods because it's not just a nuisance, it's a safety issue. We want to make sure that these streets are safe for us, safe for our kids, safe to bike, safe to jog, safe to rollerblade. No matter what we do on these streets, we want to make sure they're safe. So that would be something to improve our quality of life locally. And the strategies to do that are to use the funds that are allocated on the streets that may need the most. Everyone may know parts of Oneida were done recently, Ridge Road was done recently, but we also have to look out for the side streets. If you're like me, I live on a little side street like I mentioned. I'm sure a lot of folks out here live on the small side streets that sometimes may be neglected, so I'd be looking to do something about that as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, this next question is kind of a combination of a few because it was a popular topic. But given the challenges that South Utica has faced or will continue to face, many residents feel there's a lack of transparency, and it has caused fewer residents to receive information about projects that will impact our neighborhoods. In your first 3 months in office, how will you establish a consistent and transparent communication channel with your constituents, and what metrics will you use to gauge its effectiveness? Mr. Vitar, you're first this time.
Open lines of communication. You could visit our website, vtarutica.com. You could subscribe to it. We have a Facebook page. Be sure to follow us on Facebook. My cell phone number is on the website. My email is on the website. I welcome the conversation. I've had a few people reach out to me already. I think that's important locally, knowing that you can reach out to your councilperson, knowing that if you had an issue, you could call that person on the phone, see what's going on. In terms of projects in the area, I think it's important to get out ahead of a lot of the issues before they turn into big issues. And I won't get too deep into St. Elizabeth's because I know we'll likely discuss it tonight, but issues like that, we need a seat at the table early. Because if we have a seat at the table early, then we know what to expect, we know who the players are, we know the game. If we come in at the 11th hour, it's going to be a situation where it might be too late to have control of the situation, it might be too late where it's no longer feasible to get what we want. So in terms of what metrics I'd use to measure the community input, I'll say, I would just again reiterate, open lines of communication on our website, open lines of communication on Facebook. We really want to make sure that we're getting the information out there on these channels. Social media is a big one. And I know there's a current newsletter in South Utica, and if elected, I would start a newsletter of my own. Everyone would subscribe, hopefully, and we get as much information out there as possible so we aren't getting behind the 8 ball on a lot of important issues where we need community input.
Thank you.
Okay, I would too agree with the fact that, first of all, transparency is huge. I firmly believe that you would want to inform the residents in a specific area well before the wrecking balls coming to visit that area. So I feel that with the social media platform and Michael Bergano at forutica.com, my cell phone, my email address, you can reach out in that respects to communicate with me any specific issues. But like I said prior to that, I really believe that I would like to see get a diverse group of citizens together. I have no idea what the number would be, but branch off, not specifically with the South Utica Neighborhood Association, but just a group of people, scattered them throughout the entire South Utica area, get together on a as-needed basis or bi-monthly or monthly basis to discuss the various issues that go on in their neighborhood and to keep the neighbors informed in that respect. I feel like there's nobody who knows the South Utica area more than the neighbors that live in that specific neighborhood. So that's pretty much how I feel about that as well.
All right, thank you. I'm going to actually be coming back to you first for this next one, Mr. Bergano. I feel like we should probably just get to it since everyone wants to know about Samies, and it's just getting distracting now. So what do you think the next step for St. Elizabeth's Medical Center should be after it closes at the end of October? And do you think the College of Nursing should stay?
Well, the next step should be, first of all, to secure the building in a proper way. The Mohawk Valley Health System, perhaps the City of Utica, the UPD, and their own security staff at Mohawk Valley Health System. It's very imperative that that building, that massive piece of land is secured in a proper way to ensure that you're not going to get people to go there. The weather's getting colder, and that's going to be a perfect opportunity for people to go visit and pretty much squat over there. So I think an effective security to secure the building and keep the residents safe that are around that area would be huge. That it's very vital for the whole safety of the neighborhood. How you would do it other than secure it, I understand that not everybody is going to be leaving the facility at the same time, so obviously there is going to be going some ins and outs, but I would be in favor of, seriously, when everybody is out of there, to actually put a fence around there and secure it that way. Regarding the School of Nursing downtown, right now the School of Nursing obviously is there, and I think that by being there, it also, I think that's just a good idea to keep it where it is right now, because why put the cart before the horse if they don't have any definitive places to put it within the planning, the people that are going to be planning the project to go forward from there. So I would be in favor of just keeping the School of Nursing right there. And that's it.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I will answer the second question first. I am in favor of the School of Nursing staying there. I think there's too many alumni, too many great nurses who graduated from that school to close it. So I'm all in favor of keeping that open. In terms of next steps for St. Elizabeth's, my concern is the state sees this facility, purchases it without any regard to what Utica wants. Albany's interests are different than Utica. New York City's interests are different than Utica. If we don't have a seat at the table and lose control of where this project goes, we could see ourselves in a situation, and I don't want to be over dramatic or over exaggerate this, but this could potentially be the biggest decision South Utica makes for the next 5 decades. Its campus is in the 20s of acres. It's a large campus. I mean, let's look at Bonnie Bray, Valentine Bray, Proctor Boulevard, Douglas Crescent. Let's use that as a template for what we might be able to do with that neighborhood. Let's use that as a template for the design that might go in there down the line. That is down the line. But in terms of actual next steps, I think we need to see what the finding comes out at the end of the year. I think there's going to be some recommendations of what may go, or what may fit the character of that neighborhood, what may fit the demographics of the neighborhood, what may fit best in that neighborhood, whether it's single-family homes, whether it's a Presswood Glen type development, or whether it's mixed use, medical center, or whatever that is. I think the first and most important thing is that we get a seat at that table, we negotiate a seat at that table, and we cannot lose control of what happens there. Because like I said, don't want to reiterate too much, but New York City's interests are not Utica, New York's interests. Albany, New York's interests are not Utica, New York, nor New York's interests. We need to do what's best for South Utica, whatever that may be, whatever it might be. We need to do what's best for South Utica, and we need that community out here. We need that community input. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Vitar, what is your plan to address the current issue of homelessness in the city?
So with homelessness, that's not the problem. It's a byproduct of the problem. The problem is mental illness, and the problem is drug addiction. So I think the question becomes, what can we do about mental illness, and what can we do about drug addiction? We need more facilities in Utica, social workers, professionals, individuals who can help these people going through some of the toughest parts of their lives. Utica Drug Court, established by Judge Balzano many years ago, drug diversion programs, mental health diversion programs. The answer is not to put these individuals in Oneida County Jail so their problems get worse and then they move back to the area without the issue being addressed. So the Utica City Court, I commend what they've done over the past several years with the drug diversion program. It was championed by Judge Balzano and continued by Judge Yanis, who is retiring at the end of this year, and I have faith that the Utica City court system will continue that along. So that's one thing within the city of Utica that I really think we can do to help with that issue, because in my opinion, building more facilities to just place people there is not going to solve the root of this issue. It's just not going to do it. I work in mental health. I see it every single day where an individual is at St. Luke's, St. Elizabeth's Hospital. They may be ready for discharge, but there's nowhere to go. They have to wait for a shelter spot. They have to wait for a safe discharge plan. They have to wait for these things. What we need is to address the underlying issues, and there's many ways to do that, and I think the number one thing is to really push along the Utica City Court drug diversion program and the mental health program that's currently in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I feel that seriously, mental health, drug addiction, and it all goes hand in hand. And through my own experiences of being an educator for 40 years, unfortunately, there's not a lot of programs out there to service the needs of some of these people that do suffer from mental illness and drug addiction. It does go hand in hand. And a lot of times that people are placed in, let's say, the psychiatric unit for having some type of whatever for 3 days. After that, they let them out and there's no place for them to go. So I think there's a lot of good community agencies out there that I think they're individually they work very well, but perhaps collectively they could get together and discuss as a whole, perhaps identify to work together to better meet the needs of the persons that we're discussing. I know that ICANN is a real big thing in the community that services kids that have some social and mental illness type deals and or just learning problems, but I just think that if you're proactive with the people that need the help, I think to get them out there quicker and more to meet their needs in some creative ways. I know that the drug court is out there, but I also feel that there's other things that perhaps could be put into play as well to meet the needs, and looking at the different ancillary services that are provided within the community. So,
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Vergano, we'll go back to you right after this. So this is actually a two-part question, but I think it'll be better if we tackle it one part at a time. So please share your assessment and thoughts on the outcome of the South Utica Stewart Shop project.
okay. That's a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
First of all, the assessment of the whole project, I think that to this day, I feel that it was a foolish idea to put a full-size convenience gas station across from an existing gas station. I didn't see any sense in that at all. And for city officials to say, well, that was progress for the city of Utica, I personally don't feel that that's really progress. I think that if they really wanted to work a little bit harder, they could have probably found another type of facility to put there at Raspberries. There was a complaint about the shortage of housing, but then they in turn knocked down a perfectly good two-family house, and you had a family that lived there with developmentally disabled kids. So, so that the outcome, the whole process, I think was very shady and kind of like the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing at times, and I think that I think we should have been more transparent right from the get-go to not alarm just to keep the residents informed. Way back in February of whatever it was, 2022, was it? 21 maybe? But as far as it goes now, I did reach out to Chuck Marshall, and who's the Stewart's fellow who kind of like is their community person, and I did compliment them on the way it ended up looking, because I think it did look complimentary to the neighborhood. He informed me that because of the pushback that we gave,
5 seconds.
They allowed them to do the certain amenities to be more complimentary to the neighborhood. So.
Okay, thank you.
With the Stewart situation, first I'd like to say, we want to be the kind of community where businesses want to open up. We want to be the kind of community where businesses look at all the places they can open a business and say, Utica, South Utica, let's open a business there, because with it comes employees, with it comes revenue, and with it comes all kind of positive things. And I do want to say it can be a slippery slope when we attempt to tell private businesses where they cannot open up shop. That being said, with the Stewarts, they have opened, and as far as I can tell, they've done what they have said they would do with the green space in the back, with the lighting situation there. And now that that situation is passed, I think we have to make sure that they continue to keep their promises and continue to do what's best for South Utica. Now that they are here, we have to ensure that they continue to be good neighbors. With that situation too, let's not forget they're in Utica. I've heard a lot of individuals say, go up to the cliffs, let's go up to the burned dairy. This is in Utica. When we go to these Utica establishments, the tax revenue stays in Utica. So let's not forget, if we're going to these outside places, New Harbor's getting the tax money, Clinton's getting the tax money. So as far as we can ensure that we're spending our money in Utica, then we can continue along and do that. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, part two of the question, kind of on the same topic of revitalizing our neighborhoods. How would you propose revitalizing this commercial district right here, which is located in the Scenic and Historic Preservation District?
Me?
Yeah, sure. Let's go back.
So what I would do, once again, is to ensure that, to support the businesses in the local area, that you would have to get together with them and look at their wants and needs, and perhaps see what type of revenues that we could bring in for them to support, such as safety, number one. Number two, more trees, make it more desirable and complementary in the way it would look, and more desirable for people to come to the neighborhood and feel safe and secure. That would be most conducive for the potential business to come here and to want to establish a business that they feel once it got there that it would be successful as well. And really, that's pretty much how I feel about it. Just keep making things more conducive to support local businesses in the specific area.
Okay, thank you.
I think in terms of revitalization, we could look where we are now with the Uptown Theater across the street. I think there's something to be said to continue investing across the street in the Uptown Theater. In the parcel down the street here, the Panorama property is another one. I'm not sure if it's been officially sold. From what I've heard, it was up for sale. Initially, there were talks of a car wash, but I think that got the axe pretty quickly. So these are two prime areas down the street, and I believe the Panorama property runs to the McDonald's, back to Bagel Grove, to Tony's Pizza, and up to the Walgreens. So if there's something that can be done in this area, I think that's a good spot for it to go, whether it's shops, a couple new restaurants, whether it's a grocery store, maybe an Aldi's or a Trader Joe's. I know you say, we're price shoppers right here down the street, but I mean, competition is what keeps prices low. Plus, we don't have a Trader Joe's in the area. I don't want to drop the W word with Wegmans, but you never know. You never know. So in this area, I think that property is ripe. Once we find out the finalized sale of that area, it'd be nice to have a hand in that and see what they do with that, because it'd be a nice opportunity to revitalize this area right here along with the Uptown. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Vichar. Can you specify at least one major infrastructure project aimed at flood mitigation that you will prioritize within your first 6 months in office, and how will you measure its success?
Sure. So we spoke about infrastructure with streets and walkways, but when we speak about flooding in South Utica, the biggest example that comes to mind is along Brookline and Sunnyside. Halloween 2019, many folks were affected down there, and still affected. So my understanding is back in 2019, that area was not a floodplain, meaning the residents could not get flood insurance. So that night on Halloween, when the waters rose 8 feet into the basements, sofas, TVs, priceless family mementos lost, gone. So since that time, my understanding is there have been mitigation efforts, and in speaking to these residents, there has not been a storm or flooding quite like that since 2019, and that's the way we want to keep it. So my understanding as well is the Sequoia Basin Intermunicipal Commission is conducting a secondary study that if it hasn't come out yet, it is due to come out. The last one I believe was in 2021 by looking at their website. So measuring success, anecdotal. We can go speak with these neighbors after flooding, or rather after a big storm, see how far in the water went. And speaking with the residents all along Brookline and Sunnyside, it seems to end at a certain point. Some residents there have higher foundations that go up at an angle so the flood doesn't get up that way. But we really have to specify the houses that are the most affected and work around that. Because if we're working in an area where flooding doesn't occur, we don't want to waste our resources on those areas. We want to invest our resources in the areas that are most affected by the flooding and in those spots. And that's not to say Brookline and Sunnyside are the only spots in South Utica that incur flooding, because they're not. Up on Oneida Street, before it turns into Washington Mills, I spoke with folks up there who were affected by flooding years ago. So that's where I start, Brookline and Sunnyside, and then branch out from there. Thank you.
So as Joe said, the Sequoia Creek Intermunicipal Commission, that is primarily was set up to identify and look at to help the specific neighbors in the intermunicipal categories from all of the municipalities that Sequoia Creek affected. However, in that specific area there, they did do their due diligence to widen the creek basin to prevent any type of future flooding. However, I think that in the future and current, that there needs to be people staying on top of that whole thing to make sure that this does not occur again. Regarding the cemetery issue, coming down through the cemetery and flooding parts of Eastwood and the various roads through there, from what I found talking to David Glenn, who's the commissioner of the Sequoia Creek Basin Commission there, said that, believe it or not, that little piece of waterway that comes through the cemetery, that's a tributary to Sequoia Creek. And that's what makes it even much more detrimental to the different neighborhoods right around the Jello School area. That in the future, I think that what the purpose of it is to identify, evaluate, and share the cost from the different municipalities. That's the purpose of the Sequoia Creek Basin, and I would be a part of that, or sit in on many of their meetings to ensure that whatever ideas that they would have, that South Utica is not left out of the loop, and that we get our share costs of the help to mitigate the different problems with the flood.
Okay, thank you. Right, I'll be coming back to you for this next one, Mr. Bragano. And actually, this is the last one on my list, so get ready, everyone, to ask questions. So on a national level, elections have brought up a lot of trust issues with people lately, I guess, if I can abbreviate this question. But if you lose this election, will you honor the results and concede to your opponent? And are you confident in the election systems we have in place in the city?
Would I would honor the results, no, I would take it all the way to the Supreme Court. That's really a silly question, but yes, I most certainly would honor the results, and whoever would win and put their best foot forward, and naturally would be there to help give my viewpoints or just assist in the whole process of keeping South Utica going forward. So I mean, that's kind of like it.
Great.
Yeah, I would 100% honor the results of the election. And I do trust the process, especially locally here. You know, I feel like we want what's best for South Utica, and the question is, how do we best get there? And you know, moving along and moving forward, I think the best way to get there is through community input. And I love speaking with people. I love knocking on doors. I've learned more knocking on doors than I could reading any kind of book, reading anything online. So you know, that's a big part of what I want to continue to do. I want to continue to talk to you folks and what the issues are that are important to you, because something could be, you know, important to me, but if I'm the only one concerned with it, I think that says a lot that, you know, the rest of the residents in South Utica it may not be important to. So I want to make sure I'm hitting the important points that's important to the residents and the constituents, and really move our South Utica community forward. Thank you.
Okay, so can I, here's our first question.
Do you need the mic, or can you hear okay?
Yeah, enunciate.
I would be interested in knowing what, first of all, thank you both of you for running. I think it's commendable to put yourselves out there like this. But what, if anything, do you see the role of the Common Council in building or having a relationship with the Utica School District?
I believe you're up first, Mr. Vitar.
I think there needs to be a level of coordination there, because we're all within the city of Utica. I think if it goes back to the old saying, two heads are better than one. I think we can put our heads together, really move the community forward. I mean, look at the most recent school shooting, which, you know, by the way, very relieved to hear Jeff Lynch, you know, was released from the hospital, hoping he does make a speedy recovery. Utica Police Department, immediate response. They were there quickly, so that should be commended too. Now, moving forward, I think a way we can coordinate are youth services. Students are only in school during the school year. Now during the summer, some have outlets of sports and different things like that. I was very lucky. My parents pushed me to go to school and get as much education as I can and excel. A lot of kids aren't lucky like that. And the question is, what do we do to fill that gap? What do we want as a society to fill that gap? And sports is a big part of it. I grew up playing every sport there was until I settled on baseball and hockey. But you know, sports aren't the end-all be-all. Some kids want to go a different direction. So if we offer youth programs, blue-collar programs, working with your hands, working with power tools, skills that can be used later in life. My generation especially, I think the knock against us is, you know, we don't use our hands as much, you know, use of power tools and different things like that. You know, I think that's a skill that kids need that they can use later in life, whether for a hobby, whether professionally, or just working around the house. So to answer your question, I think the coordination could be in youth services, and it could go a long way in the summers. Maybe we can offer internship programs to students to partake in these activities, or we could, you know, volunteer in the community and different things like that. So that would be the coordination, I think. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Could you repeat the question more
Yeah,
specific?
well, just what do you see the role of the common council being as it relates with developing or having a relationship, if anything, with the school district?
I think having a relationship with any type of entity within the city and or different businesses or whatever, I think that's very important. However, that I think the Utica School District and the Common Council are, to me, they should be kept separate as far as decision-making processes go. However, the type of services that can be put into play, perhaps there could be some coordination involved with that. Children need to be engaged, as we all know. There's a lot of different issues that are going on with kids, and but as far as the coordination between the two, I think that it would kind of be, in my opinion, like almost a slippery slope. I think you're opening up a Pandora's box for something bigger than you would expect. So I would stay away from that type of thing myself, but also offer the services that the kids would need, either from the school district's perspective or the Common Council's perspective, but not put them both together and say like this, because sometimes too much is no good, in my opinion.
Okay. Do you have a question in the back, sir?
I have the two gentlemen talking about term limits. I'm going to sort of hook with last time, the third term for the mayor, same thing with common council. What's your thoughts on going back to the original term limits as voted by the constituents?
Brianna, can you repeat the question so people can hear?
Yes, the question, well, paraphrasing, essentially, what are your thoughts on reinstating term limits?
I think term limits are necessary. Politicians should not be in office forever. I think the goal is to, when you are in office, do as much good as you can, leave, in this example, leave South Utica in a better spot than when you found it, and then let the next generation, the next individual with perhaps different ideas, perhaps fresh ideas, step in and continue to move the city forward. I don't think we, going back from the beginning, I don't think we ever were a society meant to have politicians in office forever. So I would be in favor of term limits.
I too would be in favor of term limits. I think that sometimes fresh new ideas are very proactive and would benefit the whatever office you were discussing, whether it's common council, mayor, or county legislator, or whatever it would be. I think that term limits always offer us fresh of new ideas to the specific to the position that they hold in office.
go back to stewardship matter, the reason why that house was taken down, the common council approved the change in ordinance, allowing the house to be taken down in the neighborhood section. It was the fault of the common council not reading the paperwork, and they passed it. That's why that house came down on South Utica. I want to see what's on the agenda, would they be willing to go back to the original ordinance that would disallow any things like that going forward. It could happen to anybody. Anybody's house could be taken down based on the city ordinance changing. And I don't want to see that happen.
Well, I think you would have to look at the zoning issues that were changed with the common council that did allow that house to come down. So I think the common council would have to sit and reevaluate the zoning issues that would affect not only South Utica, but the entire city of Utica, because zoning was a key factor, like Gene just said, in how that house came down. And it's just an important area in which that to prevent something from happening in the future that could be detrimental to a neighborhood. So.
Okay, Mr. Bitar?
So hindsight is certainly 2020. Would the common council have approved that if they knew a house would have been torn down? I don't know. I personally would not have, because we've used the term slippery slope a couple times tonight. It would become an issue if all that had to happen was a company go in and now they're the highest bidder, offering a homeowner a boatload of money that, a house is worth $100,000, a company offers you $300,000. A lot of people are going to take that, but it's going to be to the detriment of the community. Now, what does that lead to? One house goes down, two houses goes down, 3, 4. Now, what does that leave us? It leaves us a completely commercialized part of South Utica that wasn't like that before. So, again, hindsight is 2020, but, I wouldn't like to see that thing happen in the future, just because we don't want homes that have been there for years torn down just for more commercial property. It's what makes South Utica special. It's not a commercial haven like Commercial Drive is. It shouldn't be. It's a neighborhood, family-friendly neighborhood, all the way down from the Parkway, all the way up to, 1 Jenny when it turns into New Hartford. And I think that's the way we want to keep it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, who else has a question for us? Okay.
Why are you running?
Why am I running?
Well, both of you.
Well, I've lived in South Utica for 40 years, and I've been a lifelong resident of Utica for my whole life, and I've just seen the many changes that have happened in the past and the current situations that are going on within South Utica from my own personal experience, and kind of was in opposition to the Stewarts building a full-size convenience store in South Utica. It got me very interested in seeing the differences of how things were really run within city government. And at times I felt that the citizens that attended a lot of the meetings, I don't think they were really heard like they should have been heard. And I think that having a transparent type of council person like myself, I would want to keep everyone informed to the fullest before something would go on there to be detrimental to the neighborhood. And I said before, and you get what you inspect, not what you expect. So anybody could expect whatever, but if you're not actually there inspecting the different potential projects or anything that could potentially go on within South Utica, I think that could lead to unfavorable results for the entire specific neighborhood, and that would not be complimentary. So it's to keep South Utica walkable, safe, and viable for local businesses, and just keep the lifestyle and maintain it what we knew of it then, and to continue to know of what it could be in the future as well. So, and that's.
Okay.
Well, for me, I've wanted to get in local politics as far back as I can remember. I remember being 12 years old. I mentioned I grew up in East Utica, which is the 4th Ward. I had a poster of the map of the 4th Ward on my wall. And you might think that's an odd thing for a kid to have on his wall, but it's something innate that I've always wanted to get involved in. And my wife and I, we lived out in Syracuse. After I graduated, we were out there for 5 years. We came back to Utica. I like to think that we're blessed. We could have moved to New Hartford, we could have moved to Clinton, but we chose South Utica, and that's where we've been, that's where we plan to stay. We have a child now, and they say, he's 4 weeks old today, he'll be 4 years old tomorrow. And we plan on taking him through the school system here. We have a school right around the corner, and I know it's going to go by fast, but I'm invested in this community. My wife's invested in this community. We're doing our best to move our city forward. And, we talked about term limits early. If I were to be elected, I'd like to do my best to move the city forward and then hand it off to the next person to keep that progressing. And before you know it, we have 20, 30, 40 years of South Utica moving forward, and we have a completely different community for the better down the line. Thank you.
What do you first, sir? In the olive-colored
Oh, thank you.
hoodie.
Really? You have a 4th Ward map on your wall?
Yes.
A
Is
giant?
that your question?
Yeah, I will say, I think my father got it for me, maybe at City Hall. They were the big maps, not quite the regular thin paper, a little thicker. I had it rolled up after for years, but I did say it was an odd thing for a 12-year-old to have. I admit that, but I'm a big Yankees fan, big sports fan too, so I had a lot on my wall back.
I didn't throw that out. All right, so I'm gonna throw a broad question out to you guys. There's been a lot that's gone on throughout the last 8 years with downtown, and some people have felt the neighborhoods have not necessarily been neglected, but the concentration of improvements have not been necessarily in the neighborhoods. So if you were to pick one specific project that you could complete as an elected official, what one it might be? I mean, there are buildings that have, there are buildings that have insulation boards over them. There's a park that's really underutilized. Pick one specific project, if you were elected, that you could complete, what would it be?
Complete downtown or in South Utica?
No, in South Utica.
Okay.
Downtown's, we've got nothing out there.
So we spoke about St. Elizabeth's, and I'm going to double down here and say it would be St. Elizabeth's campus, because that, again, is going to shape the next 30 to 40 years of what we see in South Utica. For better or worse, we don't want to be back here in another 10 years saying, if we just took an extra 6 months and thought it out, then it would have worked out. We need to come up with something and take our time to make sure it's the right thing for this neighborhood. And whatever that might be, whether it's the single-family homes, whether it's a community of townhomes, condominiums, or what have you. But if I could pick one thing that I would ride out the whole way through Common Council, it would be seeing through that St. Elizabeth's complements this neighborhood and really pushes us into the future and makes us a 21st century area here. So that would be my take.
Well, once again, the hospital is probably the biggest focal point of what could possibly happen to complement South Utica and keep it existing as it is today for the future. As I was walking around, there's a citizens group up there on Douglas Crescent, Valentine Bray, Proctor Boulevard. It's called the Citizens to Preserve Our Neighborhood, and that is incorporated. It's been going on. It's been in existence since 1999, and as you would want to see whatever developer there complement the neighborhood, it's also very important to see that the incorporations of the Citizens to Protect the Neighborhood, that too is put into place because it is a legally binding entity that they established. And one is there's a 40-foot easement that goes from the property back to that surrounds the entire process of the building of the hospital or the land there. The other one is the easement. There's an area on Proctor Boulevard that goes through, there's a street that's been developed that they definitely it's a violation of the agreement that they had with Citizens to Protect the Neighborhood over there. So I'd say whatever's built there should be complementary to the neighborhood, but it also should also be in It also should be put into place to protect that existing corporation that has been developed there for the residents in the specific areas that boundary of the hospital. So.
Right. Thank you. All right, who's next? Ms. Kaderis.
Thank you. So, Joe, I will say in a blink of an eye, it really does happen. So my son was born 5 years ago. I just enrolled him, my husband and I enrolled him in public schools, and so now he's at kindergarten. And I was so excited that we weren't going to have to pay for full-time childcare anymore, except Utica does not have before or after-school programs for school-aged children. So my husband and I are still paying out of pocket for private childcare. My question is, assuming there is a demand, which I personally think there is, should the responsibility be for the budget of a before and after-school care program be on the city or on the school? So who would be responsible in your view?
I think that would be the school. We spoke earlier about the coordination between the school board and the Common Council, and I do think there's coordination at times, but something that seems maybe purely academic, or I remember after-school programs, whether you play capture the flag after school, just keep you busy for a few hours. But I do think that should be tackled by the school board and maybe the school budget, something that the voters may have to vote on down the line, if that's something that a lot of individuals in the area are in favor of, then I would definitely recommend reaching out to the school board, seeing how that process might play out. But in addition to that, we also spoke about youth programs. So if we're talking during the school year, I think it's the school. If we're speaking about summer programs, I think the Common Council can and should get involved to ensure that our youth are maybe doing things that would be conducive to their future. So that would be my answer. School year, the school board. Summers, I think the Common Council may have more leeway to ensure programs are available. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Morgana.
So the needs of children, it varies from the age of preschool up until the middle school or high school or whatever. So as far as the preschool type thing or in kindergarten or whatever, the after school programs, that is a very good thing that I know was in place, and it probably should maintain itself to meet the needs of the little ones, and perhaps not only with academics, not only with social skills, but also with academic skills. A lot of times they have older kids come in and tutor them or whatever to meet their academic needs and or play games with them socially. But however, as the kids get older, then I think a lot of the activities that would be provided for them, sometimes I don't think the school district would have the means to do that in a more effective way. I think that's where you would get a lot of some community groups out there to develop some type of programs to meet the needs of the older kids, is what I'm saying. So the little kids, yeah, K-3, K-4, the after-school programs are very, very effective. But after a certain age, I think, after that time, I think you're setting yourself up for a lot of poor happenings, in my opinion. But I would say that keep it more towards based on the little kids. After they get older, then I think that parents or families should probably find their means of taking care of the older kids in the community.
We have a question in back. Yes.
So I was just going to ask you guys, what are your specific skills, abilities, experience that you feel would make you the best candidate for the council?
Good question.
So my specific skills that would make me a good candidate, I feel that I am a good communicator, that I see both ends against the middle. I'm very logical in thinking. and I am very determined that whatever issue would be brought in front of me, I just don't hear it, but I'll investigate it to the point that to get the most amount of knowledge and make the most logical decision that would best represent the voice of the people. But most important, I think it's all about communication. And as a teacher of 40 years in the Utica School District, I think I developed a lot of good communication skills that allows me to hear both sides of the story. There's always two sides of the story. And I just don't think that to be narrow-minded to the point of thinking, well, my way is the right way, because sometimes somebody's got something else to say that would be just as important or valuable to help in the decision-making process. So with that said, I think number one is being a good communicator, be open-minded, and be a good listener, because when you're talking a lot, you're not listening. So
Thank you.
Well, you know, I think my legal background puts me in a unique situation here to represent you folks on the Common Council. All day long, I read statutes, I read regulations, I interpret laws. If my boss comes to my desk with an assignment and it's a law or statute I've never heard of, I don't say, sorry, I can't do this. I do the research, I learn the issue, I understand the issue deeply, and then I make an informed decision based on everything that I've encountered. And that's exactly what I do on the Common Council. I would see issues, and I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not an expert in municipality law, but the goal is, if elected, to dive into this head first. We will see new issues all the time. We'll see new legislation all the time. But I can take those skills that I've harnessed over the years and been fortunate enough to encounter, to use that to my advantage on the Common Council and ultimately the advantage of the people in South Utica to really take a deep dive into what we need to do to move this community forward. Thank you.
There's some hands, but now I've lost track. It was you.
It's going to be just a quick
Sure.
comment followed by a quick question. I, for one, really appreciated Celeste Friend and what she's done for our ward. And one of the greatest appreciations was for transparency. Websites, we have emailed, we were able to read what Celeste voted on with a rationale. Are you both willing to continue with that incredible transparency, allowing, for me personally, to sit at home and knowing that somebody's going to represent us and at least have a rationale for what was voted and why. So I think ESOS has really amped up transparency, and I'm willing to continue with that, because when we moved back here, which shows you military, we're gone for 25 years. Our first time moving back here, we didn't even know where our county council was. So,
Yeah, you know, in speaking earlier, I mentioned the monthly newsletter that currently goes out to the folks of South Utica. Like I mentioned, that is something that I would want to start, a monthly newsletter. We have our website up and running. We have a Facebook page, cell phone number, email. So all of those things, I think, go into the ball of transparency and just being available. Because I think that's a major part of being transparent, being available. If someone's trying to call you and they're trying to hunt you down and they can never communicate with you, I feel like that cuts against being transparent. But if someone calls, you pick up the phone, you have a conversation about a certain issue, maybe on your street, around the corner, something like that. So to answer your question, website up and running, newsletter, if elected, I will certainly start that. And I encourage everyone to provide an email or a cell phone number where we could reach out to you and keep everyone apprised of everything going on in South Utica, keeping everyone apprised of the voting, why it happened that way, maybe even, you know, the counter arguments to it, but why we chose the way we chose. Because at the end of the day, I mean, you're the boss. I don't see this as a forum, I see it as a job interview. So, you know, we just want to make sure that we're able to speak freely, and I think at the end of the day, that's a big part of it. Thank you.
So, I think I really answered that question about 3 other times, but communication, transparency, I feel I'm a good communicator and I can establish good dialogue with people. Communication through the various media networks is very important, whether it's a newsletter, whether it's social media, whether it's just picking up the phone saying, hey, this is what's going on, and we'll talk about it, or come and over to a specific location to see exactly what's troubling, and to be hands-on person with to see what the issue is, and just to communicate with all of the residents within South Utica to address the specific needs of the different problems. Like I said, way in the beginning of this whole forum was that I'd like to see myself establish a bipartisan, diverse group of citizens that represent all of South Utica. So if something's going on Seward Ave, when this particular group gets together, we could say, okay, that's going on Seward Ave, and this is going on Arnold Ave, and this is happening on French Road, and put it all together so nobody communicates better with the people that live in the neighborhoods better than the neighbors themselves. So they would act as, I would act as, by having that group, that meeting group, that would act as a conduit to keep the communication going very strongly and meeting the different needs of the constituents. So.
Thank you. There was a question, I was skipping around, and there was a question here that I missed, and I'm going over my notes, and I liked this one, so if you don't mind, I'm going to butt back in with this other question that was submitted from earlier. From your perspective, can you tell us, how do you think your two platforms differ? And I guess you would be first, because you just ended, so Mr. Vergano.
Well, how my platform differs is simply that I've lived in South Utica for 40 years, okay? I kind of know what the heartbeat of South Utica is, just through my own experiences, the achievements, the failures and what's happened in South Utica for all those years. I don't have any political ambitions. I'm just a regular guy that is, through my own experiences of living in South Utica, that could best feel like when I get into something, I go all the way with it, and I'll just stay to it to the end and see all the different projects that are put in front of me and in front of the Common Council, that you just follow it right to the end until you make a good, logical, rational decision to best represent all the people of South Utica that you represent. I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you.
So truthfully, I don't know Mr. Vergano's full platform, but what I can tell you is a little bit about my own. What we're looking to do is not take and you know, I said it in the beginning, Republican, Democrat, Independent, we're all one community, and I meant that. I'm a middle-of-the-road guy. I'm a reasonable person. I'm not going to rubber stamp everything that comes through on the Democratic side. I'm not going to reject everything that comes through on the Republican side. I'm going to listen to what the legislation is and make a decision based on that and what I believe is best for the people of South Utica. You know, it's something where the best ideas can come from both sides. I mean, look, you know, this isn't CNN and Fox News where there's both political ends here. I feel like a majority of us fall in the middle, in that box, whether you're a little bit right of the line, a little bit left of the line. I think for the most part in South Utica, we're all reasonable people. We all want to see a lot of the same things, a lot of the same progress pushed through. So that's what I stand for. I stand for common sense, being reasonable, and listening to both sides and making a decision on what I believe is going to be best for everyone standing out in front of me here. Thank you.
Wrap up. As a reminder, if you haven't donated and you would like to contribute to our being here, the other side was welcoming and great to work with when we got sort of shoved out of the other place. So if you can show your appreciation by contributing, I would appreciate it. And I guess that's everything I have to say. We'll be back here next month for our mayoral forum, and I'll send out information. Thank you everyone for your great questions, and I think we deserve another pat on the back for being a really good, respectful group. So thank you very much, and thank you to our candidates.